Hey everybody, welcome back to Holt Growers. I'm your host Timothy Holt, and today we're going to talk about the lowly tomato. So stay tuned for that. As always, give a shout out, give a thumbs up, and hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video. We have 6 cherry tomato plants and 6 slicing tomato plants in our garden beds this year. And they were a little late getting in. You can check out a previous video on that. A friend of mine from church ended up giving me some when my seeds did not sprout very well. So thank you, Kathy, for that gift earlier this spring. And let's see how those tomatoes are doing. I've highlighted them in previous videos all summer. They've grown immensely large, but it doesn't really matter how big the plant is if there's no crop or very little fruit on them in this case. So let's check out our tomatoes. I know in previous years I've had a hard time growing the slicing tomatoes. They just seem to not produce very many tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes and grape tomatoes seem to do well here, but the slicers just haven't. Let's see how these 6 plants have went, 12 total, and go from there. We did get a little bit of crop last week from the cherry tomatoes. Let's see what this week has done for us. For those of you who don't know, I do weed as I go and throw that out of the garden beds. So let's check them out. I don't know how well you can see that in the video here. If you can see those are the cherry tomatoes, and we can see quite a few crops all the way up, which is beautiful. They're nice size, they're gorgeous crops, and there is a lot of them ready to harvest and get to market. The ones here on the left are the cherry tomatoes, and you can see the slicers over here, and the slicers, they're definitely taking a lot longer time to grow, but we've got a fair amount of growth and crop there, but they are definitely still green, unfortunately. Would like to see more red ones, but they are definitely green. So let's get these cherry tomatoes out and see what's going on with them, shall we? Let's see how many we have. So to harvest cherry tomatoes, what I do is, well, I just take a hold of them and give it a little twist. If it comes out with a little twist, it's definitely ready to come off. If I've got to work at it, then I usually let it sit for another day or two. And these, as you can see, are very ripe, are definitely ready. While I'm doing this, I'll talk a little bit about how I have these supported as well. So I do have carrots under here growing intermixed, and we can go ahead and pick one of those, see how they're doing. They're not growing real great, as you can tell. They're getting tall, but the actual carrot that we eat is not handling it that well. So I don't know if I'll do that again next year or not. We'll see. We still have time for those, but we're going to go ahead and pick these. If they're still green, we're going to leave them on here and let them continue. So if you're wondering about these dead spots, That is typical as you start harvesting these tomatoes. They will start losing some of their trimmings here. And I normally just take them off as I see them, so I get a healthier plant that way. It also promotes the plant to produce more fruit, because the plant thinks it's dying, so it's going to try to reproduce itself. Well, looks like I have some chicken feed here. That entire plant broke at the base. All right, so let's see what happened. While harvesting, we did get a lot of the cherry tomatoes. So let's talk about those first, okay? As you can see, they're perfect size. They look good, nice and healthy, and there's quite a few of them for only 6 plants. We also have a lot of green ones still on the vine. These are indeterminate tomatoes, which are great. Indeterminate versus determinate is, I used to think that was hard to understand, but indeterminate means that once they start producing fruit, they're going to continue to produce fruit and set fruit until the plant dies, however long that may be. Determinate plants, on the other hand, what they're going to do is they're going to set all their fruit all at one time. So you might get a larger harvest out of determinant fruit, but once you start picking, that's it. They're not going to continue to produce fruit. You might as well just pull up the plant and start a new one. Indeterminate, though, like I said last week, we got a few of them, but this week we definitely got another good batch. Do have some bad news about our crops. So green beans, it was pretty sad. We had an aphid infestation that occurred. I went on vacation for a couple of days, came back, and our entire green beans were affected by aphids. That's why if you look here, you can see they're all pulled out. Our peppers are starting to get some fruit on them, but all of the green beans, the entire row, had to be taken out. They just devoured them, which sucks. But we did get quite a bit of green beans out of those plants earlier in the season. It would have been nice to continue getting them through this month and next month, but there's not a lot we can do once the aphids already killed the plants. So the nice thing is, it looks like it was pretty isolated, and we'll take care of that. The other thing is, one of our slicer tomato plants broke off at its base, and that happens, unfortunately. However, if the base gets broke off, the entire plant dies. So as you can see, right there is the plant. And right there at the base is where it broke. Now, it's not necessarily that bad of a deal, because I noticed that this plant has bad worms, what have you, growing on it. So what we'll do with this is, since there are some pretty big green ones here, I'm going to try and get those to redden up. If they don't redden up, then they don't redden up. Otherwise, the whole plants can get fed to the chickens, and they'll enjoy that little treat. And that is a brief synopsis of tomatoes. Next year, we'll be growing another variety of tomatoes called Roma tomatoes, which is something I tried planting from seed this year, and they just didn't take. Roma tomatoes are oblong shaped. I find them to be tasty, and several of my neighbors do as well, which is great. So stay tuned in the spring, and we'll see how that happens with the growing from seed again. That'll start probably in February. And tune in. Every week I try to get a new video uploaded. Next week I'll probably be talking about carrots in our next week's video, because they are starting to look pretty good. I might cover one on our peppers. We have our pepper plants, and I see that they have definitely rebounded pretty well. They were a late planting as well, so stay tuned for that. This, by the way, is not what you want to see in a tomato. Just FYI, if you see this in your tomato, get rid of it. It's the chickens are going to love it, but definitely not for you. That one looks like a good green tomato. We'll see if it'll ripen up for us in the sun, but if it doesn't, then it doesn't. As always, may God bless you, and get out, grow something today.